Hey Ober Sports, Jacob Ober here. In this video, I'm going to give my top 6 college football teams right now. And as you may know, the College Football Playoff Selection Committee makes their first list tomorrow of the top 25 teams. I decided I should make a video like this. I do like watching college football a lot, and these are going to be my top 6 teams, in my opinion, how it should be ranked. It's not going to be a prediction, it's going to be how I would rank them. And it might be similar to the list, it might not, who knows. But anyways, this is how I would rank the teams right now. So here we go. At number 1, I've got Alabama. Alabama has no wins over any top 25 teams right now. As of right now, they had the early win against Florida State, obviously. But they've dominated their competition since game 1. They started off the season number 1, and it's hard to move them down from number 1 when they just keep blowing teams out. They are going to be tested in the next 2 weeks here. They have a game against number 19 LSU and number 21 Mississippi State in the next 2 weeks. Those are going to be tests for them to see how they fare against a bit stronger competition. But in my opinion, I think they're going to handle those teams pretty easily, and they won't move for that number 1 spot unless they lose. Number 2, I've got Georgia. And Georgia has wins over number 5 Notre Dame and number 21 Mississippi State. And Georgia, like Alabama, has looked pretty dominating in their wins. They've blown out the majority of the teams that they faced. If they lose, they'll obviously drop. If they win and Alabama loses, they'll move into number 1. At number 3, I've got Notre Dame, and that might be a surprise to some of you, but Notre Dame, to me, has looked really good. Their one loss was only to number 2 Georgia, a 20-19 loss earlier on in the season. They're coming off dominating wins over USC and NC State, who were ranked 17 and 20. And their only close game of the year was the loss to Georgia, and they've just demolished every other team that they faced. I mean, I'm talking like more than just 10 points. I mean, they're winning by 20, 30 points against some pretty good teams. They beat Michigan State, who's number 24, by 20 points earlier in the season. I think they have more quality wins than Ohio State does, and they've looked a lot more impressive than them. And number 4, that leads into number 4, and my number 4 team would be Ohio State. And Ohio State had that big comeback win on Saturday against Penn State. They've looked dominating in wins over inferior teams, like the top 3, obviously. They played a much weaker schedule, though, than the top 3. They've only had the 2 games against high-quality competition. They lost to Oklahoma 31-16, and that really stands out, in my opinion. That's the deciding factor for me right there. Ohio State lost to Oklahoma early in the season at home by a pretty decent margin, about 15 points. I mean, that's no close game or tough-fought game right there. And Notre Dame has looked just a lot more impressive than them. So for that reason, I put Notre Dame ahead of Ohio State. Ohio State has no problem blowing out the top team or the bottom feeders, but they seem to struggle a little bit with ranked teams so far. And they did have the big win over Penn State, which vaulted them into the top 4. But I mean, they just haven't looked as good as Notre Dame, in my opinion. They're still a great football team, and they've got a clear path to the playoff, but right now I put them at number 4 behind Notre Dame. Now, my 2 teams on the outside looking in, at number 5, I've got Wisconsin. Wisconsin's an undefeated Power 5 team, and I just can't leave them out of the top 5. That distinction is something that there are very few undefeated Power 5 teams in college football at this time of the year. There's only 3 right now, and that's Alabama, Georgia, and Wisconsin. Alabama and Georgia are in the top 2. So the only thing separating Wisconsin from those 2 teams is they've just played much more inferior competition. They haven't played very many good teams this season at all. They looked unimpressive in those wins against Northwestern, Purdue, and Illinois. All 3 of those games they won by 2 possessions or less, and they were favored by over 20 points in each one of them. Their schedule is very weak. They have not played anybody worthwhile. They have no ranked opponents that they've beaten. They're going to be tested in these next 3 weeks here. They have a game against Iowa in 2 weeks, and then a game against Michigan in 3 weeks. So those are going to be huge games for them. Michigan has kind of fallen off a little bit, but they're still going to be a big test for the Badgers to just see just how far along they've come. At number 6, I've got Clemson, who has 2 top 25 wins over Auburn and Virginia Tech, and they've looked better than Wisconsin, I'll admit it. But I just can't put them over Wisconsin because not only is Wisconsin undefeated and they're a Power 5 team, but Clemson had that loss to Syracuse, remember. And while Syracuse isn't a bad team, they're not a good team. They're the one team on my list that has a bad loss, a truly bad loss on their resume. And for that reason, I just couldn't put them ahead of Wisconsin. If Clemson was undefeated, I'd probably have them in my top 3, but they couldn't finish it against Syracuse. Other than that, they've looked great, but I just can't. I mean, in my mind, an undefeated team trumps a one-loss team that has a loss against a non-ranked opponent. So, anyways, that's my top 6. That's all I really have to say in this video. It's going to be interesting to see how the College Football Playoff Committee decides their list, how they shape it up. It could be very similar to mine. It could be wildly different from mine. Who knows? But that's how I would rank them. Let me know in the comments how you would rank the teams, or if you disagree or agree or anything like that. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe, guys, and thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.